And we're back. We are United by Rice, where we talk about all things API and H, from entertainment to, I don't know, we've done authors. We haven't had a DJ. We haven't had a clown yet. So,
Well, the common denominator, I always like to say storytellers or creators, right? I think we've had
yes.
authors, we've had obviously film and TV, but we'll keep
Yep.
the door
Yeah.
open for
Yep.
the creative space in general.
Definitely. I'm
I'm
Junko and I'm here with my co-host.
Yeah, and I'm Ben Lee. So it's nice to talk to you all again.
Yeah.
Later in this episode, we have actually a cast interview with the cast of a new film called Last Days that just opened this past weekend. It is Justin Lin's new film, and we'll talk about him a little bit more. It's also, in many ways, kind of a return to his roots. This is an independent film and very much a, Asian American genre film. Not quite leaning that deep into the genre the way Better Luck Tomorrow did 20 plus years ago, but certainly a return to his roots. So excited to, I'll give a little bit more details about the cast right before we play the interview, but excited to dive into that. And with that, Junko, Justin Lin is someone that I think folks in our space know quite well because of Better Luck Tomorrow, and then he of course went on to make very big studio films like the Fast and Furious franchise. I think some other major films in there as well, but really just thinking about Better Luck Tomorrow, what do you remember where you were, what you were thinking, what your initial impressions were of that film? It came out in, I believe, 2002.
2002. Yeah. I was living in Boston. I was in my 20s still then. And let me see it. Yeah, I think we had all heard what had happened in Sundance. That was already legendary. I remember it was winter, so it was still winter in Boston. So maybe it was like 2 or 3 months after the Sundance premiere. So by then, even on the East Coast, it was already legendary. And do you know? I guess I will explain to our listeners.
I was going to ask you because I know some of the story, and it, certainly other very famous directors that were quoted as saying how much they loved the film, etc. But why don't you shed some light? Because I bet you a majority of today's audience doesn't know the legend.
I guess so. Yeah, maybe the legend. So, once upon a time, there were these duo film critics named Siskel and Ebert. And they used to run they were very famous, especially in the, I could say, 80s and 90s. Well, maybe less in the 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, they were the first,
like real
maybe
film critics.
only like film critics, because they had a TV show, right? Yeah. That was like a weekly show. And obviously this is before the internet where, there were tons of opinions on every film, all the time. This was in many ways, I remember it at least as the only way other than the Sunday paper that you ever got
print,
any discussion about films.
Yeah. So, so fast forward to 2002 winter at Sundance. They screen Justin Lin's Better Luck Tomorrow, and they're doing a Q&A as usual. And someone goes, someone who's not Asian, I think they were white, in the crowd goes, don't you feel embarrassed for creating a film that portrays Asians so negatively? To which, I believe it was Ebert.
Okay. Yep.
So Ebert stands up and basically says, they are filmmakers. They could tell whatever story the hell they like. Is pretty much what they said. And that was a moment, especially because such, just to put in context, in 2002, they were probably would be considered, as far as film critics, the most visual, because they had that weekly TV show. So they had a lot of notoriety, because everyone else is usually in print form these days, or radio. So for that to happen, and for him to stand up and to just give his 2 cents in that moment, which is absolutely correct, has become legend since then. And I know a lot of friends who were in that room, in that theater that day. And, it's always interesting to hear them talk about it. But yeah, it was, um, and it was a nice reminder too, because I think at that point, especially being like early 20s, we always had to feel like you had to portray like your people, quote unquote, a certain way. Um, so it doesn't ruffle feathers or anything. And what Justin created was definitely a slice of Orange County. It was very West Coast, very, very West Coast SoCal. And but it was based on a true story too.
Mm,
And, a lot of the details, of course, written into in the process, but it was based on a true story, and it's everyone commits crimes, everyone makes
mm.
mistakes. Is kind of you know what Better Luck Tomorrow, I think, at the time was, and it was very truthful, I think, to kids who were in their late teens, 20s, in the 2000s. I think there was a certain, I don't know, like a certain place that like Asian America was at. There was kind of we were grasping for our identity perhaps, but especially because it's been 23 years. We're almost coming up to 25 years
Mhm.
since Better Luck Tomorrow's been out, and excuse me, and it feels like that was a great visual portrayal of where Asian America youth was at in
Well,
that
I think
time.
that's right, and I think Sundance and all that happened a couple years before any theatrical release. So 2018, 2019 is probably when this event happened. Roger Ebert spoke up on behalf of the film. So it is 25 plus years now. And the criticism was probably that because there hadn't been Asians portrayed on film basically as normal mischievous teens, right? Like, oh, how
Right.
dare you portray Asians this way? But the reality is this is kind of what people today ask for, which is like, can you just show
Yeah.
Asian people as normal people and not
Yeah.
always be about racist trauma or generational trauma, right? It's like what
Or
happens
the
when you just have
immigrant
four.
experience. Yeah. And it
Yeah,
was the first time in a while we had not seen an immigrant experience movie coming
yeah,
from, I think, Asian Americans as well. Yeah, Justin was really one of the first to capture just a snapshot of the Asian American experience
yeah.
of the early 2000s for sure.
Okay. um I mean, I do think there's a little bit more to the legend too, because I remember something happening around. I do think the movie didn't do as well as expected because on one hand you had like some top directors saying this
Mm,
is a great film. You had
yeah,
obviously
yeah.
this public moment with Roger Ebert, which was very pro Justin Lin, pro the film. But I think there was also some criticism the other way that still caused the film to not get the wide release that it should have gotten,
I
and
guess.
and
I mean, I just remember like, I mean, maybe it was how they tapped into the college population then. Well, I mean, plus I was
mm,
living in Boston. So that was the right place to put in a lot of marketing because there
mm,
were so many of us, all of us in our
yeah,
20s
yeah.
and stuff. So I felt like, at least in Boston, being a big college town, that there was a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so that's how I remember the film because I saw it. I remember the theater. It was on Shattuck Avenue in Berkeley. So I saw it in college with a group of Asian friends. And it was definitely a big deal, more because I think, you know, at that time, I didn't, I was not an independent film person, right? I was a normal person who watched big theater films. And, so to me it was a big deal. It's hey, we haven't seen an all Asian male cast film. We've seen Joy Luck Club was probably the most recent kind of American made Asian cast film. And here's a movie about four guys or five guys. I've not seen anything like this. This is, me and my group of friends outside of murder and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember it being a real big deal. And then ironically, I think I also remember being disappointed.
Mhm.
a little bit because it wasn't kind of the big, studio film that I was used to seeing.
Right,
Like it
that everyone's
wasn't,
gonna see. Right, right.
yeah, it wasn't that funny.
But
It
it sounds like that
wasn't.
was your introduction to indie films. Maybe?
I think so, right? Because I think you
Yeah.
look back at your life and say when does your appreciation of films kind of happens, and it happens in waves. At least for me, it happened in
Mm,
waves. Like one was the early part, and we talked about this in one of our horror episodes, was what my dad used to watch. Like that was my first
mm,
introduction to films.
mm.
Then it's like your late teens when you're starting to watch film with a different kind of like pubescent lens of what does
Yeah,
this
yeah,
film
yeah.
mean, and
Right, right, right.
and then you start to go the art house direction, right? And I think that's
Right.
when this really was it could very well be the first independent film I watched. I'd have to actually go back and
Mm,
think about that, but
yeah, 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 yeah.
um but now we all know, regardless of box office success, how groundbreaking the film was, started the career for many
Like
individuals.
everyone.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, so let me ask you the question. Who, in
Yeah.
your opinion, has had the best career since that film?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I see, especially an artist's career is, um, I think you have to look at an artist's career pretty much like at the end of one's life because you might end up hitting it like 5 years before your death.
Sure,
Like,
sure. But
uh,
we are, 25 years removed. So there's definitely like, it's
I
enough
don't know.
time to talk about people at least, right?
No, I think everyone's had their,
Well,
had their
let's
due.
let's let's
Although I
recap. So
guess
besides,
I wish Karen would have like, let's see, she had a few things, but
well, let's
yeah.
give the
Anyway,
rundown just so people know. Like there was Justin Lin, obviously the director. I think the boys, the main like
yep.
cast, were played
John
by
and
Perry Shen,
Perry. Yep.
Jason
Jason Tobin.
Tobin, Sung
Yep.
Kang.
7. Yep.
Who am I missing from the core
Roger.
group? Roger Fan, and
Yep.
then of course their kind of I guess enemy slash guy they were kind of envious of was played by John Cho,
Who's
right?
John? Yeah, yeah, yeah. John
Yeah.
had already done, or he was already on an upward trajectory
Yeah, he was
compared
like
to the others.
he was like the
Yeah.
famous actor of the film. Yeah.
I think he had already done Harold and Kumar, or it was
Yes.
just something like that.
Or he was in what's that? Oh God,
Oh, the MILF that made him famous.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
I'm like, no, just the MILF movie, great.
Yeah. American Pie. But and then
Yes,
so
thank
the
you.
the Karen you're talking about is Karen DeTota? Is that
Nope, Karen Anna Chung. She played the cheerleader girlfriend.
Oh yeah, of
Yeah, yeah,
course.
yeah.
Yeah. There were a host of
Yeah,
cheerleaders in it. Yep.
yeah, but
She was
she's
the
like
one.
she's the main love interest, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, everyone's been doing great. I guess John's been like a little bit on the G. Well, he's probably doing something, but they just announced the comeback of a Harold and Kumar. That's right.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that.
But
I mean, he has
but he's
so
been in
many.
Star Trek films.
Yeah,
He's been
yeah, yeah.
in obviously some I don't know if they're not quite art house films, but he's been in several films the last
Yeah. I
5
really like
years, right?
Searching. I really liked
Yeah.
Searching, which was relatively speaking kind of a
It's a good
breakthrough, I
it's
think,
a
in
good
filmmaking.
like pandemic movie or
Yeah.
COVID movie, right? Because it's
Yes.
basically,
Definitely.
the impact of social media and
Yeah.
all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason Tobin just he has a film out on Netflix, I think, but he's been great on he was great on Warrior. Um, and then Roger's been on the deal. I think he's been but he's been continuing to audition and stuff. So I think last he was in an indie film, but like you could probably spot him in a few commercials here and
Okay.
there.
Well, I think and there's Perry Shen and
Yeah,
whatnot, but I think
Perry's is set with Young and the no, General Hospital. He's been
yeah.
on General Hospital for like the last, I don't know, like 6, 7 years, and he's been
Okay.
kicking ass, so good for him.
Well, I feel like the answer to the question of who's had the best career really comes down to Justin. It's probably Justin or John Cho. I mean, Sung Kang has been in a lot of Justin's movies, notably the Fast and Furious films, and
I
is
don't know.
has a production company, but
yeah, but I think everyone's kind of winning because all of them at this point have stability in their lives. So if you're an
okay.
artist with stability, that's winning.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm going by box office receipts. I'm saying
Oh,
like
box office?
who's won
Oh,
by like had the most like
well, you
big
never know,
successful career. Yeah.
but you don't know what the back end deal is. You can look at the
True.
box office, but you don't know what the back end deal actually was. So
Okay.
that's another way to look at it.
Justin's got to be doing pretty good at the very least. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
my first job when I got to LA in 2005, October 2005, I was already a union actor then, and I came to Little Tokyo. It was like the 5th day of landing here, and there are all these pieces of paper looking for Japanese background. So when I got here, I was like, oh, look, there's union background work. Okay. So that was actually one of my first jobs that I had once I got here. And from there, I actually ended up meeting a lot of friends that I still know now. So like a full 20 years. Yeah. So,
Sure.
and just for, I guess, listeners, curiosity. So Justin actually, I forgot which film, I think he went to UCLA Film School or USC.
I can
That's
look
a
that
little
up
random.
really quick.
But he actually ended up working at the Japanese American National Museum in the Media Arts Center. So he has had a relationship with Little Tokyo for a while. And even, what was it? Better Luck Tomorrow, but also Better Luck Tomorrow had a huge Little Tokyo component and Little Tokyo filmmaker component to it. And then his follow-up, Finishing the Game, was also a lot of in and around Little Tokyo. A lot of folks he knew are all stuffed into that movie. So yeah.
And he did confirming he did go to UCLA Film School.
UCLA. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. So
and by all accounts, he's the nicest guy too, despite like being big time, studio director.
Yeah. I think back in the day, I saw him I would see him walking around the Silver Lake, the Silver Lake Reservoir over here with his wife. But yeah, I'm like, yeah. So yeah, as far as I know, he's always been pretty consistently low key.
Yeah.
But I mean, especially with like Little Tokyo stuff. Yeah.
Sure. Well, let me describe what we're going to play after this or after our intro. On occasion, you get invited to like a virtual press conference where, the 3 actors themselves that were part of this interview were in different locations themselves. So it's like one big giant Zoom call. And so it's a little bit different than our setup where it might be both Junko and I interviewing somebody. And we had 3 actors from the film. It's called Last Days. It came out this past weekend. And the log line, I'll just read it, is about a determined young missionary who travels to the remote North Sentinel Island. I don't know if you had ever heard of that. To convert an isolated tribe while a detective races against time to stop him, fearing he will harm himself or the tribe. The film is a biographical drama based on the true story of John Allen Chau and blends a procedural element with the adventure of his journey. And so as I was doing some research for this film, apparently there was I think it was Outdoors magazine. There had been a big feature about this and then ultimately a documentary about this event. But did you know anything about John Allen Chau or this story?
I don't think so. I don't know. I feel like you hear these occasional missionary stories.
Yeah.
Occasionally. But no, I hadn't heard anything about this. So
well, the 3 actors I talked to, Sky Wang, who more or less is making his, kind of film debut. I know he's done some TV work prior to this. He plays the main character, John. Ken Leung, who a lot of people will know from shows like Industry most recently, but, he's a very familiar name and voice from TV shows like Lost, and he was in a Star Wars film, all those type of things. And then Radhika, I think it's pronounced Apte, A-P-T-E, A-P-T-E. She plays the detective that I mentioned in the log line, who is basically trying to stop him because she's aware of the islanders not wanting external visitors, and in fact
Okay.
that they could cause him harm because
Right.
apparently they have license to, protect their borders.
Right. Yeah. Oh, so for context for our listeners, so then you're put in a Zoom room, and is
Mhm.
it you and other press people, or is it you and three of the actors?
Oh, good question. So the way this thing
Yeah,
typically
like how
works,
are we going to be listening
yeah.
to
So
this?
it's just
Yeah.
the four of us. Like there's no
Okay.
other people. Oftentimes what happens is I am in a press waiting room with other press people, and
Oh,
then they
okay.
let you in just to that group.
Mm,
There are occasionally virtual press conferences where it's like what you described, where it's press like all
right.
listening, and then you have
Oh.
to do the virtual Zoom raise hand if you have a
Oh, okay.
question and
Yeah.
hope you get called upon. Actually, you were on the other side of this at the Screen Actors Guild Awards when I asked questions of
Ah.
the Shogun cast.
Okay. Okay.
So that, and again, that tends to actually be used more for live events actually versus
Yeah.
these type of things. Here they
Okay.
just carve out time, and
Okay.
I had 30 minutes, so actually a good amount of time. Sometimes
Okay.
you get like 4 minutes. Sometimes you
Right.
get
Right.
like
Right.
one question and you're out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so
Okay. So yeah.
we had a good conversation.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
especially if it's three people, it could. Yeah, I don't know. You could it's I guess give and take. It can kinda is it hard to wrangle three people? Like, how was the conversation?
Um, it's not hard. I mean, sometimes there's more content. Well, a few things, right? Sometimes you haven't seen the film or the show,
Right.
right? This is a case where I was lucky enough to get the screener maybe the day before and was able to
Mm,
watch the film so I could prepare questions for each of them. I knew each of the characters they play. When you've got, 2, 3, 4, 5 interview subjects and you haven't seen the content, and maybe don't even know much about the characters they play or how
right.
many episodes they appear in, then it could be a little bit hard and
Yeah.
awkward, right?
Yeah,
Then you're just
that's true.
asking generic questions, and whoever answers.
Right, right.
It
Okay.
also it also depends a little bit on their own rapport. Sometimes they're really good at passing the ball along. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're,
Yeah.
especially the veteran actors are pretty conscious to make sure the younger actors get
Yeah.
their time.
Oh, that's good.
So
That's
it
good.
just kind of depends. But this one
Okay.
was as smooth as can be.
That's good.
They're
What
very
was
proud of
like
the work.
yeah, what was like one key thing that our viewers, listeners should like listen
Sure.
out for?
Well, I think it's the nature of the film, right? So Last Days, how would you describe it, right? Besides the log line, if you just heard that story, here's like a evangelical young kid going out to try to, um, you know, spread his gospel
Right.
to an indigenous, a group of indigenous islanders. You mostly take out of that, oh, this guy was just crazy, right? He's
Right.
radicalized young boy and just
Right.
crazy, and I think what you will take away from the film and the discussion is they pass no judgment, right? Like,
Oh.
and in many ways, I liken this film to something like Adolescence, the show from Netflix,
Oh, okay,
where
okay.
just basically what happens when you have young people, young men exposed to a lot of content, in this case, instead of, masculine content or ultra
Yeah.
masculine content, it
Yeah,
happened to
yeah.
be biblical content, happened to be
Yeah.
Christian content.
Hmm.
And then in absence of something else in his life to
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
occupy,
yeah.
the a need for
Mhm,
belonging and
mhm.
community, he just went this direction. And there's
Yeah.
actually, a scene in the film where you could see, the sliding door. What would have happened if,
Ah,
so and so had accepted this?
took a different path. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah. That's
and I
cool.
think
Okay.
that's what the film does, right? It's like
Yeah.
they don't pass judgment. The actors
Okay.
themselves like
Yeah, yeah.
approached him from an empathetic and compassionate
Mhm.
um viewpoint versus just saying, "Hey, we're gonna tell the real story and we're gonna
Right.
put our editorial stamp on it."
Right, right, right. Ah, alright. I think, well, it sounds like listeners are in for a treat.
Yeah, and again, I think, the reason we opened this conversation with talking about Justin Lin is the other, I think, interesting thing about this film is what happens when you take a guy that knows how to make really big films and you give him an independent film budget again, and he wants to tell a story. Well, now he's learned all these amazing techniques, and he's probably getting some help for free, right? From some, in terms of
Well, I
equipment
think he
and
doesn't.
things.
I don't think he needs to. Yeah, I think he can pay everyone. So.
Well, but the point is he didn't have to, and I think what you see is then a very cinematic looking film
Yeah.
versus one that looks like it was just like shot on an iPhone, for instance, like some independent films are, and nothing wrong with
Like
that, right?
Tangerine.
So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Which has
So
many
anyway,
accolades. Yeah. Okay.
well,
Cool.
hopefully people enjoy this type of interview and this type of format, because it is a little bit different. We don't have the same banter that both of us would often provide, but I think people will appreciate the cast and the work that they put together. So here's our interviews with Ken Leung, Radhika Apte, and Sky Wang. Hi, all. I'm Ben Lee with Awards Focus, and actually United by Rice, which is a podcast that I run very focused on Asian American Pacific Islander talent. So it's really actually a pleasure to talk to all of you and talk about this film. I'll start with really the basic question of what drew each of you to this project initially. Maybe I'll start with you, Ken, especially given, so many of the big kind of IP titles that you often star in these days. What drew you back into the kind of the independent world?
Well, Justin, I've been wanting to work with him for a long time, ever since, obviously Better Luck Tomorrow was such a seminal film for our community.
Sure.
And I'm not so familiar with his tent poles, but I've obviously been following him and know about him, and so I was excited for the opportunity to work with him. And beyond that, the script, I didn't know about this story. At the time in 2018, I was in the middle of moving and also changing schools for my little boy, who was 3 at the time. And so I was consumed by just other stuff, and I totally missed when the news broke about this thing. So the script was my first exposure to the story, and it was very kind of jarring to have that be my first exposure to the story, coupled with the obvious, overwhelmingly judgmental reaction to it. And so I had those two as my introduction to the story, and it gave me a instant protective kind of hold your horses. What is this? What happened? Who is this guy? And this story kind of intro to it. So that was my entry.
And how about you, Sky? You've had a number of roles in the last few years, but really knowing that this was going to be a big kind of showcase for you.
Yeah, I think it was I did a spoken word piece at the BFI for the anniversary of Better Luck Tomorrow. This is way before I knew about the project, before they were casting, and Justin was there, and I didn't know I didn't know who he was, so I just said hi, and I did my piece, and I watched this film, which was kind of something that I'd just been really desiring to see, which was young East Asian flawed characters, people, and there was this really electric energy to the film, which felt quite radical and bold and exciting. So I was very taken by that, and then of course to be sent, I sent John's Wikipedia page first, and sort of approached it, I imagine, with a similar judgment, from the headlines and from people's comments to other people. And then again, like Ken says, that dichotomy between that versus reading the script, which suddenly was about connecting with a human being and humanity and connection between people and multiple people, not just John. So yeah, I think that was...
Okay, and I definitely want to come back to the spoken word piece, but Radhika, how about yourself?
I think yes, the first and foremost was Justin. I I'm also not very aware of. Not really engaged myself with the rest of the franchise, the big franchise. But I was in the middle of shooting another film, and they wanted me to audition, and I couldn't audition. So I was like, oh, obviously it's not going to happen because I can't audition for it. And so Justin said, let's get on a call. And I got on a call, but I hadn't read the script because I hadn't sent it. And he was like, oh, you haven't read the script? I was like, this is a disaster. This is never going to work out.
So you're just
then
reading from paper.
I was like, literally, I was like, oh, I haven't read, I haven't. Oh my God. I was like, I'm talking to Justin Lin. And why is this happening? And then he was like, oh, don't worry. You read the script and we'll meet after the weekend. And I was like, is he serious? And so I read the script and he met me again and we just discussed the script and that was it. And he is, and they can vouch for it. Probably one of the most kind and nice people that I've ever worked with. And I really mean it. I mean, I sometimes used to be quite shocked. I used to just tell him that, what, you're really nice, like you're a really nice person. And I think, and the second thing, of course, was that I didn't know about John Chau either. I don't know why, but I have missed it. And when he told me about it, I tend to be quite cynical. And I was about the story, and I was like, oh, okay, but Justin's take on it was really lovely. He said that he felt the same when he read it, and then he was like, why do you have to go from, like, your community, or like our community, and then go and then like do this? And he said, then I realized it was a young boy, and I want to know more about him, and I wanted to know why, what was his story, and I thought it was so beautiful, and I think the film is about empathy, and that's what connected with me the most. So I think it was a no-brainer, really.
Okay. Well, and I'll come back to you too, especially on the empathy piece, because you certainly bring that in toward the end of the film. Sky, you talked about the spoken word performance, and I actually had read that in the Q&A with Justin. Why was that happening? And was that event where you met him also the first time you had seen Better Luck Tomorrow, or had you watched it before film school or whatnot?
I had no idea who Justin Lin was. I had no experience with Better Luck Tomorrow or any of his work. I made a short film about a young boy growing up, Chinese, British, who basically puts on a giant yellow paper mache mask to sort of hide from the world. And it sort of plays into school dynamics and like growing up with racism and feelings of shame, and then coming to sort of become proud of where you're from. Amazing woman, producer, director, extraordinary human being called Chi Tai saw that and really just ended up encouraging me and supporting me on my sort of filmmaking journey. And then she said, I'm running this event. Would you do this spoken word piece? And I was just like, sure. That's it.
Yeah, and Ken and I are probably closer in age than I am to you or Radhika. So I think, Better Luck Tomorrow. It is amazing. I think we're about 25 years later, and there really hasn't been, another at least American film with like 5 Asian boys, kind of shown as a group of friends. There's been like Dee singular coming of age stories, but nothing like that. So it really, I think, stands the test of time. I'm curious, guys, you kind of then dug into the story of John Chau. Which part of his story kind of most connected, or did you connect with the most, right? Because I think in the film, there isn't much of I think there's not an effort to like pass judgment on him, right? We're depicting him as, his story. I'm curious though how you saw him and what you drew you to him and what you kind of told yourself or in collaboration with Justin in order to build what your version of his character was going to be.
I know for me, it seems on the surface, it seems to be a lot or it's easy to think that the film is about religion. For obvious reasons, he's a Christian missionary. But I think it takes one step from that to realize that it's really just the story of a boy who has a very kind of pure dream. And that, I have a 10-year-old boy who at the time was, at the time this happened, he was 3. At the time I got the script, he was 8. So he's in a very developmental finding who he is, finding out about everything kind of place. And being his dad, I'm in that kind of place, kind of witnessing that and figuring out where I play a part, where I don't play a part. And so just the experience of being a dad and also, to just pull back a little bit, we have a filmmaker who is deliberately telling a story about somebody that everybody thinks is an idiot. But he's doing it in a way where he's grappling with the unknown and unknowable elements of being a dad, as a dad himself. And that immediately is compelling. That immediately ought to buy him the time of day, like a second to just remove ourselves from what it looks like on the surface. It's not about religion. It's about a boy and his dream. And regardless of it, anything you think about what the dream is about, or what it is, or if it's worth it, or all this other stuff, it's about a kind of very pure thing. Anyway, that made it a very compelling thing to be a part of.
And kind of in the partisan world we live in now, where we very quickly judge people, was that kind of an element of what attracted each of you to this story? That again, you have a young man that had been judged very quickly as he just was crazy, right?
For me, it was the opposite. That was something that made me want to run the opposite direction. The idea that this was someone who people had instantly already judged, this individual, and wouldn't be willing to come to the table about it, was something where I was like, I'm aware of the conflation between actors and the characters they play, and I was kind of scared about it, for selfishly myself, and also like the people who I'm close to, and what that would do for that. I think I very much started from a place, to be completely honest, even after being cast, well, I was kind of like, I still don't get it. And it was only I think the first time something started to kind of click for me was someone said a quote, which was, it's a beautiful thing to be lost, or a beautiful thing to be hidden, but it's a dangerous thing to never be found. And I started to kind of understand that this was someone who actually just had a dream, which is something that I can relate to, and had run at it so hard that he had missed all these moments with the people who were just right next to him, and how sad it would be for me to do the same. And I think I had found that in my own life, where I was like, I know what it is to just get lost in something, and the tragedy of actually not being found in that thing as well is kind of struck me.
Well, that's an interesting interpretation, because one kind of an opposite interpretation that one could have is that it was maybe not feeling connected enough to his father, or feeling his father's acceptance, or even the scene with, I think, Melanie, the young woman that you meet, and there's this moment where, oh, maybe if John had a romantic partner, this crusade would have not never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're saying is actually he was so obsessed with this that he missed those connections. But I had a different interpretation. And is it fair to say that it should just be up to our interpretation because nobody really
Yes,
knows?
I actually had the same interpretation probably as you did,
Hmm.
in the sense that I feel like I think he's just a boy, a lost boy who seeked his father's um, a particular relationship with his
Hmm.
father, or some kind of validation, or some kind of value that he wants to attach to himself and feel more than what he feels, right? And the loneliness that he's struggling with.
Hmm.
And to be honest with you, it's a tricky question because I was just listening to your answers, and it's very interesting because the truth is, if I meet another Christian missionary suddenly tomorrow who wants to go to a tribe and destroy that, I will judge that man. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
In the sense, yes, it's very difficult to listen to people who are very blind religious people who believe that this land is ours or whatever, and so it's very difficult to find. I mean, of course, the people with different degrees of expression of what they feel and
Hmm.
how they feel, and I think which is why I think what I like about that film is that I come from Mira because I do relate to her character a lot.
Hmm.
And even though she's focused and she really believes in one thing, she's also conflicted and confused and equally lost. Right? So
Hmm.
I think as Sky said, the whole thing about being lost and being confused, I personally think comes really beautifully in the film. It's really
Hmm.
beautifully laid out in the film. The film doesn't take any side,
Right.
really. And I think it just sort of shows you the journeys that these various characters take. Um, and as you were talking about your son, it's funny, my daughter's only 10 months old and just
Hmm.
gaining like awareness, and all she wants is to spend time with us. That's
Hmm.
all she wants. And
Yep.
it's only now that I realize that when kids don't get that, like, or kids, like, it's so basic, I think. I mean, this is what I
Hmm.
feel now, but I think that's, so I do think I do understand what you were saying, and I think probably understand. I think I had that interpretation.
Just to clarify, I think we might all be saying the same thing in the sense that John, there's this feeling of something absent or something missing, and
Hmm.
John is in search of that thing, and that North Star like really changes, and really, I guess it's intimacy. It's to be held by your dad.
Mm.
Um,
I
uh, and
I see what you're saying now. Yep.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what
Um,
you're saying now because I earlier what I heard you say was it was his zealousness around Christianity that was driving him, but in reality, he kind of gravitated to that in the absence of feeling connected to other things, and then missed everything around him. Yep, got it.
Which actually is also true, right? I mean, one thing
Hmm.
always leads to the other and sort of comes around, goes in circles.
Yep,
So it is actually that.
yep. Well, I'm curious, Radhika, your character Mira. Similar question for you about the motivation of the character, because early on, or at least the first half of the film, it feels like it's this protectionist element for the people of Sentinel or the island of Sentinel. And then there's that scene where you see the two girls together. And actually, when I first saw that scene, I'm like, I wonder what I'm supposed to take away from that. And then it's not till the end when you tell your story about, not really having a husband that it all comes together. Do you think at the end, Mirror was driven more by the empathy for John and feeling lost versus truly um, trying to protect the the people from the Sentinel Island that clearly didn't want to be bothered by outside influences?
I think the Sentinelese is her,
Mm.
because she's that island. She's not accepted by people, and
Mm.
people, the world won't let her be. Who she is, and just let her be. And they want to come and they want to pollute her, and they want to change who she is. So I think she's fighting for her own freedom, and which is why John Chow is like the enemy because he's that exact person. And
Mm.
and the beauty of how I also believe in everyday life is, unless you see yourself in that person's eyes, like you basically see that we are similar people, we're struggling and we're both lost, or we're both islands. Only when she sees it, she resolves it. I feel that she wouldn't have been allowed. I mean, in the story, because it's some part of it is fiction, right? But I'm saying in the story, she would not have. The boss would not have allowed her to take the helicopter. I mean, forget the boss. I mean, that's a different story. But and actually find an end to the story until she had found that empathy for John Chau. So I think that's just inevitable.
Well, thank you for that answer. A couple of kind of acting technique questions. So, Sky, you kind of famously lost. Well, how much do you weigh normally? Because I can't even imagine losing 30 pounds off of your frame.
I don't know. I don't know. I
I guess it'd also be kilograms too, but yeah.
Yeah, because I think one of the slightly frustrating things was I was kind of already, muscular but lean, and so then it sort of became about, actually, Justin called me and he said there's an issue in that you will, in sort of 4 weeks or whenever it was, strip down. And he has to look like a sort of scrawny boy, and he shouldn't look like he's trained. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't and then it just really became I guess a question of just trying to make sure that there was that differentiation in physicality.
And how did you do it? Over what period of time?
You were so dedicated, Sky. I used to sit there in that breakfast restaurant and look at you and be so impressed every day.
I can't really remember. I blocked it from my mind.
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Or you had no calories and you lost your memory from that period of time.
Effectively, it's similar to that, in that I think to put on muscle, you tend to work out and eat, and then to do the reverse, you sort of do the reverse. Yeah, do the reverse.
Yes, breakfast counter, he would take broccoli. He would eat all the green vegetables. Do you remember? And you were eating steamed mackerel, was it?
Prawns. Was it prawns?
But I used to go out and get that steamed fish. Was it mackerel? Do you remember? I used to get the steamed fish and you had that you just had that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, that was when I was still getting to enjoy food. And so then
really?
So that was me eating.
Sorry, I did not know.
That was me just actually kind of in a good place. And then it was to just suck out.
Wow.
You just have to do what you need to do. But they had someone on hand who was fantastic, who just made sure he would check everything, and it was all safe.
Radhika, it doesn't sound like broccoli and steamed mackerel's your normal breakfast choice.
Oh, I was pregnant. I was eating.
Yeah. Ken, one of the things I've always admired about you is you've typically played Asian males that are very American, strong, sometimes even brash. I think of Miles all the way back to the Lost Days. In this role, you play the immigrant father with an accent. Was that actually hard to do? Yeah, it's not a character I've seen you play before. You've probably done it. I just haven't seen it myself.
Was it hard to do? I guess, I mean, I worked on it a lot, every day. So it wasn't hard because I wanted to kind of get it right. I wanted to get it to a point where I wasn't thinking about it so much. Yeah, no, I mean, it was kind of fun to do. So in that respect, it wasn't so hard.
See in the film, you live with these roles, and as we've talked about, they don't really give kind of simple answers in terms of views of faith, right? Or meaning, like, in putting yourself in the shoes of these characters, did you come out of it with any different views?
I think that faith is important. I think without faith, there is no hope. But faith in what is the most important question for me. And I'm learning these days to have more faith in the goodness in people. And I think this film has also been a part of this journey.
It's very important in today's times for sure. Anything to add to that, Ken or Sky?
I don't know if this is a faith thing, but there is I do have a sense that, you know, we have this idea that he's gone. And obviously the physical John is gone. But I have this sense that his singularity of purpose was so pure, strong, extreme, all those things, that it creates an energy. And that energy is still around. Like I have, maybe this is, I have a belief that energy continues. And maybe one of the way it's manifesting is in this movie. That from us, the seeker in John is still seeking. So I have a belief of that type of energy.
And then is it fair to say, a very similar question, that if you wanted audiences to take away one thing, it's similar to what both you and Radhika have said, just kind of this.
I don't need I think the audience, I hope the audience will take away what they need. My thing is more about how they're entering the movie. Like I would hope that they're entering it with as open a vessel as they can be. What they take from it is kind of not my province.
That's such a good answer. I have never heard that answer. I really love it.
Well, it's different. Two people will take something different. The hope is that they take what they need, something that can be helpful, healing, So
I think I have time for just one last question. Working with Justin, like, what parts of this actually felt like very much an independent film, and were there elements that felt like, oh yeah, that guy's made some big films and this is a very, very fun and different experience?
It's probably not the answer to your question at all, but it's a random thing. But I don't know why I thought of that. But doing an independent film, but still Justin Lin is Justin Lin. And so one day, Sky, you're gonna laugh at this, but one day I was doing a scene where I drive up to the airport, and just randomly Justin just came to the car, and I was driving, and he just said, "You're the best driver I've ever worked with." And I was so happy.
That is pretty funny.
Compliment.
Well, given his tentpole films, that is actually that's a perfect way to end this. I think that's a perfect, and it is the best compliment you could get from him.
Compliment.
For the record as well, Justin would always say how incredible Radhika was, full stop, but he especially meant her driving. And then
I know, right?
I had to drive, and he was like, "Don't forget, Radhika is the best driver I've ever seen." I was like behind the wheel. I am going to. I have to compete.
What do you think it is, Radhika, about your driving? It just feels safer than
But I'm a really good driver since I was 16. Nobody believed me. Now I finally will.
Amazing. It's so nice to meet all of you. Congrats on the film. I do hope audiences really take it in and see it. And it's been a pleasure talking to all of you today.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.